Good afternoon, everybody. So delightful to see all your smiling faces. My name's Matt Stefan. I'm part of the leadership team here at Dwell Church. We got 5 core values that we are working hard to honor. We want to be Jesus-centered and research-based, trauma-informed, diverse, affirming, and inclusive. And we are on week 59 of figuring out week 60. Week 60, my goodness. We're getting old. We're growing up, you guys. Week 60 of figuring out what a church looks like when it's based on those things. And I'm thrilled that you are here. As Lisa intimated, today is something we call Big Dark Sunday. And it's hard to do that on such a gorgeous spring day. See a lot of salmon colors. I, too, was tempted to wear salmon today. But can't do it on the Big Dark Sunday. And I am thrilled that we are going to journey through this together. But first, I want to let you know a couple things that are coming up in the life of Dwell Church. Next week is Easter, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Easter at the end of the service, sort of a death then resurrection arc to this service. But 3 things I want to tell you about it now. 1, it's going to be awesome. So just check that box if you're looking for something awesome to do next week. That will be it. 2, at 2:30, we'll be having our Easter party in the parking lot. Everyone is invited. I hope you'll invite a friend. It's going to be really fun. There's going to be a bounce house. That's maybe not for everybody, but the petting zoo will be for everybody, and especially the Easter churros will be for everyone. I'm really trying to make Easter churros a thing. This is the maiden voyage of that as a concept, so come and eat a churro and help me launch it into the world. Easter churros. What I really want to talk to you, though, about right now is what is happening after Easter. We're launching into a series of weeks where we're working on a series called Unlearning the Bible. Oh, first of all, I'm supposed to say connect with us. So if you're new, I would love for you to become a part of Dwell Church, and specifically, I would love to connect with you if you're visiting. So fill that out and get all the great information about Dwell Church, and we'll start discerning. Is this a place where you could find a spiritual home? I sure hope it is. Now, on to Unlearning the Bible. Part of what we're going to be doing here is to be trying to think about a different framework for Bible reading that doesn't feel quite as heavy or yuck as it sometimes can feel. So, in a minute, I'm going to ask you all to invite a friend. Last week, somebody told me that, hey, when you talk about reading the Bible and when you talk about inviting a friend, it kind of feels yuck to us. And I want to say it does to me too. Not because of the Bible, and not because of inviting a friend, but I grew up in a church where there was so much pressure around those things that they ended up feeling not life-giving, in fact, quite yuck to me personally. So I've spent decades praying, journeying, and searching. Is there a different way to understand reading the Bible? Is there a different framework that instead of arriving at yuck, arrives at something that feels like abundant life? So we've got to unlearn a few things about the Bible so that pressure doesn't lead us down the yuck path. But if you are feeling like, oh my gosh, the 2 things I least want to do are read the Bible and invite a friend to church, I get it. Man, do I get it. You are in the right place if that's something that you have wrestled with. So we will unlearn some things about the Bible so we can rediscover it in a life-giving mode together. That's really what this is about. I'll say a little bit more about it in a second. But I want you to hear a little bit more about unlearning the Bible. Here it is.
Is there a way of reading the Bible that helps us in our actual everyday lives? This is the question I've been asking myself since I started reading the Bible every day in the 7th grade. I went to church. Someone told me if I wanted to follow Jesus, I needed to read the Bible every day. So I did. And since then, I've been working hard to find a reading that helps me connect with Jesus, helps me love my neighbor. And I've become convinced that we're going to have to unlearn something about the Bible to arrive at a reading that helps us in our everyday lives. We've got to unlearn the Bible.
So this is a great series for anyone you might know that's been wrestling through their faith, because who isn't wrestling through their faith? Gosh, that is part of what it is about. The Hebrew word Israel means to wrestle with God. It is part of our spiritual heritage to wrestle through our faith. So we're embracing that here at Dwell Church. It'd be awesome if you invited someone to that. In fact, that's sort of what we're working on here. Through Easter and Unlearning the Bible, we're on an experiment together. Not only can we find a way to read the Bible that feels good on our end, but can we find a way to invite people to church that feels good on our end and on their end? And part of what we have sort of discovered together is what we're going to try to call a trauma-informed evangelism. Sometimes when you invite someone to church, you are implying, hey, I've identified you as someone with a big problem, and would you come to my church and maybe we could fix that problem for you, right? But we want to try to frame it in a completely different way, which is, you seem like a fellow journeyer. Would you join me on the journey? Something has been helpful to me in my faith, and I think it might be helpful to you too. And you can simply say at that point, or maybe not, because all I know is my own story. I don't know your story. I know my own story, and my story is my faith has been helpful. It could be the case that it could be helpful for you as well. So what we did a few weeks ago was work on this script. In fact, I gave everybody 60 seconds to send this to someone in a text message. And now I'm going to follow up with my person. I want to invite you to follow up with yours. But I want to tell you a little bit more about trauma-informed evangelism first. When I was sort of a kid, sort of internalizing why you would invite someone to church, there were 4 core beliefs that I think went with the pressure to invite someone. And that was that the world is bad, the world is scary, everyone out there is lost, and we have the answers. And as a kid, those were things that I sort of like figured were supporting the idea of inviting someone to church. But I slowly realized over my adult life, if you carry those 4 things around within you, what is that doing to me, to my soul, to have those ideas with me everywhere I go? And so we're trying to shift some of the reasoning under which you might invite someone to church. It isn't because we have all the answers. And it isn't because the world is scary and bad, we're trying to rescue them. They have their own story that they're living. They're probably amazing people. We're just trying to bear witness to our story, which is really quite simple. Gosh, Jesus has been really helpful to me. And it could be the case that it's helpful to you too. And that's the tone and tenor of a text message like this, which might say, hi, our church is having a series of Sundays after Easter about taking apart your faith and putting it back together in a way that works better. It's called Unlearning the Bible. I'm kind of excited about it. And I thought of you. In the old way of doing it, the implied message was, you're on an uh-oh path. I'm worried about you. Now the implied message is, I thought of you. You're someone I think of often. And I think the posture, the spiritual posture, goes from judgment to love. When we tell someone, gosh, you're just someone I thought of. I'd be happy to go with you, but if you're not interested, no worries. I respect you as a human being with your own story. And if this isn't helpful to you, gosh, I hope you find something that is. We're cheering on these people. We're loving them. So I want to give you 60 seconds. If you haven't sent this to someone, now's a good chance. Whoever comes to mind would be amazing. If you just want to invite them on Easter, that's great too. Hey, next week's Easter. Curious if you have a place to go. You could come with me if you wanted to. If not, that's fine. But we're going to invite some people to church, or at least I'm going to follow up with my person. Even if I'm the only one doing it, that's okay too. All right, 60 seconds to follow up on this, or maybe do it for the first time. 3, 2, 1, go. It's pretty on. Now it's really on. All right. Good job, everyone. Okay, we also have these postcards. You can grab one on the way out. Invite someone to Easter. We'll be celebrating the resurrection of Jesus. It's got our party in the parking lot information here, and you can grab them as you leave today. Now we're going to be talking about what we call at Dwell Church, Big Dark Sunday. Traditionally, this is the Sunday where we celebrate what is called Palm Sunday, where in the timeline of the last week of Jesus' life, he enters Jerusalem during Passover week to great fanfare. The people welcome him. They treat him as a king. And I thought where we could start today as reflecting on our Big Dark Sunday experience, that we could start with reading the Palm Sunday traditional story. So let's begin there. Here it is from the book of Luke. When he, being Jesus, drew near to Bethphage and Bethany, right outside Jerusalem, at the mount that is called Olivet, he sent 2 of the disciples, saying, go into the village in front of you, whereupon entering you'll find a colt tied on which no one has ever sat. Untie it and bring it here, and if anyone asks you, why are you untying it, you shall say this, the Lord has need of it. So those who were sent away and found it just as he had told them. And as they were untying the colt, its owner said to them, why are you untying this colt? Why are you taking my donkey? That's what they're saying. And they said, the Lord has need of it. And they brought it to Jesus, and throwing their cloaks on the colt, they set Jesus upon it. And as he rode along, they spread their cloaks on the road. And as he was drawing near, already on the way down the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of his disciples began to rejoice and praise God with a loud voice for all the mighty works that they had seen, saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord." Jesus is here quite clearly being crowned as king. This is a coronation moment for Jesus. But the story has enough details to tell us that he is a certain kind of king, and his kingdom is not what you might expect. First of all, what is incredible about this coronation moment is that this very crowd who a week before had celebrated his coronation, a week later will cheer for his crucifixion. He is a different kind of king. Here we think of Jesus riding on a donkey. There's a long, venerable history of the image of strong man on horse. And I've only ridden a horse a few times in my life, but you can imagine a knight on valiant steed or warrior riding the horse. In fact, this image has been somehow seared into our collective lexicon. Oh, I left my picture out. It was a picture of Vladimir Putin on the horse. You know that picture? Still in our world, strong man on horse is a major important message. Not so with Jesus, different kind of king. Here he rides a donkey, already diminutive. But not just a donkey, a colt, a baby donkey. So small, so young, in fact, that no one has ridden it before. Why? Because it was very recently a baby. In fact, many have observed if you're riding a donkey of that stature, your feet are probably dragging the ground. In Matthew, Jesus says that he is gentle and humble in heart. And here he is enacting the coronation of the gentle and humble king, riding a gentle and humble steed. But finally, what is most important about this is that Jesus experiences great sorrow as he comes into Jerusalem. We think of this as being a moment of great fanfare and triumph, but that is not what Jesus is experiencing. When he drew near to the city, he wept. And he wept because he knew that the people were not going to respond to his message. And so what is the tone and the tenor of this kingdom? It's the kind of kingdom that says, blessed are those who mourn. Sometimes in life we have to ask, what is the meaning of a very good day? Have you ever had just a fantastic day? Maybe it was today. The weather's incredible. It's so beautiful out there. Almost wore salmon. Sometimes something so good happens to you, you have to ask, what was the purpose of this great day? Or this great season, or even this great era? Sometimes when they come to an end, we look back and we say, what was the meaning of that? Was I just lucky? And maybe that is. Maybe you and I, sometimes we're just extremely lucky. But there's a deeper, better reading of what it means to have a great day. And it is that Jesus is saying to you, if you liked that, gosh, you're going to love living in my presence. You loved that sunset? Can't wait for you to meet the creator of the sunset, whose idea it was. This is what theologians call the sacramental nature of things, that somehow something plain and everyday could tell us about something divine. Sometimes when we ask, what do we make of a good day? We say it's a window into God's heart. Every sunrise, every moment with friends, every bit surfing, every time at Christmas, those are all moments where God is whispering, this is what I'm like. This is what my presence is like. Come and live closer, nearer to me. A good day tells us something about God's heart. But we also have to ask, what about the moments when we weep? What about the worst moments of our lives? What about the moments that are so unimaginable, we didn't have a plan for those. We're just simply shocked and devastated. And that's what we're doing today. We're thinking about those moments. And what we're going to find along the way is that that's part of Jesus' heart too. That he had those moments. Not just because that was the plan, but so that he could live with no daylight between him and us. The sorrow that you might have known, that's the same sorrow that God's heart has known. What we're going to find as we share our moment together is that Jesus is with us in the very worst of human life. Now, there's a theologian, Nicholas Walterstorff, who talks about God's sorrow. He was a famous theologian. His son died when his son was 23 in a rock climbing accident. He wrote a book called Lament for a Son. What is it like to unexpectedly lose a child? And he wrote this about his faith. It's not only the God of the sufferers. It's not that God just is worshipped by sufferers, close to sufferers. It's definitely that, but it's also the God who suffers. And if you remember, a few months back, we were working our way through a series called When It's Your Turn, because someday the season of suffering is coming for you. And what we learned there is, yes, God suffers quite dramatically, quite painfully. His heart is broken over and over again. He isn't just the God of the sufferers, he is the God who suffers. It is said of God that no one can behold his face and live, and I always thought this meant that no one could see his splendor and live. A friend said that perhaps it meant that no one could see his sorrow and live. Or perhaps his sorrow is his splendor. That instead of explaining our suffering to us, God simply shares in it. And if you think about it, it makes so much sense. That you will never be heartbroken if you never love something. And so the being that is love, of course he is the most heartbroken in the universe at the state of things. And that is what makes him so incredible. His infinite love is also his capacity for infinite heartbreak. His sorrow is his splendor. And so, of course, when we open up our heart and share our heartbreak, of course he will be there with us. Big Dark Sunday, part of what we'll do together in a few moments is set aside 5 whole minutes to feel the sharp edges of the grief that we're sharing together. And we'll just sit in silence, and you can pray through however you would like to, whatever particular thing in your life you have chosen. We've asked everybody to choose something specific in advance, and if you're just hearing of this, I have high confidence that you will be able to select something that is heartbreaking to you in your story pretty quickly, even though you didn't know. Today was the day for that. But also we ask people to wear or bring an artifact maybe even that symbolizes your grief. I'll explain mine in a moment. What we're going to do together in silence is simply just offer our pain to God and trust that he is who he says he was. The God who suffers. The God who is with us in it. And as we'll see in a moment, anything that God touches, anywhere he is present, is transformed. And so slowly but surely he works on us in our grief. And we're going to trust him to do that in a moment. Now, part of the problem with the Big Dark Sunday is that Americans especially, but all Westerners, live in essentially denial of death. We do everything we can to turn a blind eye to death, loss, grief, and dying. In fact, there's a book by Robert Greene called The 48 Laws of Power. Have you read this book? One of them is stay away from sick people. That's his method for succeeding in life, because Americans know that's not the path. That's not the path to the good life. We have institutionalized and structuralized a great fear. And anthropologist Ernst Becker wrote this book in 1973 profiling how Americans trying to live the good life have said we are going to put anyone who is grieving or anyone who is dying, anyone who is sick as far from our daily lives as humanly possible. Some cultures develop shared rituals of grief where as a small child you would know when someone dies, that's what we do. But a lot of people today have never even been to a funeral. And so hospitals and cemeteries and funerals become places around which we have great anxiety and trepidation because we have tried in every way we can think of to put death, grief, loss, and dying far out of our minds. And Ernst Becker says it's simply because we, as all humans are terrified of dying. Some cultures bring it close to make it less scary. Our culture puts it as far away as you possibly could. So when the moment of grieving inevitably comes for you or I, we are surprised and unprepared. And the church, at least that I grew up in, was complicit in leaving me unprepared. I was hammered with the message. The joy of the Lord is your strength. If that's a tear, better be a happy one. Better be a joyful tear over there. We're joyful people here. But a close reading of Scripture shows, oh, God is heartbroken. That if we have tears, our Father cried them well before us. And especially in the story of Jesus, it is crucial to notice the important sub-theme, the substructure of his sorrow. And so about Jesus, they said this, Isaiah 53, people love thee for our transgressions, he was slain and wounded, that part, we're forgiven, yea. Before that, they said, he was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. One translation says, he is a man of sorrows He is one from whom people hide their faces. He was despised, and we held him in low esteem. Jesus was a man of sorrows. That is the God that we are serving. Of course, we're not alone when we open up our heart and share our grief. But there's so many more. This is just a few because I only get like 20 minutes up here. Psalm 34:18, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Personal favorite, Psalm 23, verse, not 1, it's 3 or 4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall have no fear, for the Lord is with me. See, the God of sorrows promised to be with you in transformative ways when you're truly vulnerable. So what we're going to do is just choose a moment, 5 minutes here in a minute, to say, God, here's what I'm grieving today. Will you be with me in it? Now, a little bit about my story, what I'll be grieving today. This is my niece, Mandy. Mandy was an absolute ray of life to anybody who met her. Starting when she was about 18 months, every day she would go into the bathroom with my sister when they were getting ready, and they would put on makeup together and talk about their day. And so Mandy, everybody knew that she was the boss. She was the most opinionated person in the household. She was the youngest of 4. And she was one of those kids that had a lot of babble before they had a lot of words, but she would babble like this and like this and tell absolutely everyone what to do. And here she is bossing around my dad. My dad also here making an iconic Steve Stefan face. And Mandy passed away in 2018. And my mom called me early that morning. You know, when your mom calls at random times, you answer. And it was an incredibly snowy day in Kansas City, a foot of snow on the ground. And she said, the police called us and said that one of the grandkids was unresponsive. And my sister lived an hour away, so in a foot of snow, they had to drive across town. And what normally took 1 hour took several, and they just had to ponder because the police hadn't identified who it was yet, so they just didn't know. They were wondering. And when they showed up, it was Mandy. And she was so vibrant. It was absolutely shocking. And I remember, these moments, but I jumped on an airplane, I flew out there, and I watched my family journey through this, and some parts of it were so amazing and inspiring, and some parts of it were just like not functioning. That my mom just laid on the ground and wept. And that my sister, real nobly, was like, I'm just going to get all these people through it, right? And at Mandy's funeral, there was just great big 500 people in this school gymnasium, and they all were just telling Mandy stories because she was so hilarious. She was so opinionated, and she was so kind. And I remember we had gone skiing the year before, and Margot was 3, and Margot was 18 months, and Mandy was 2 years older than that, so whatever that is. And I remember listening to them take a bath together, and Margot was taking every toy. And Mandy was saying, I'm playing with this one, you're playing with that one. And then Mandy would say, okay, I'm playing with this one, and you're playing with that one. And okay, I'm playing with this one, you're playing with that one. And it was just 30 minutes of Margot stealing her toys in the tub. And there was this great big funeral, and then afterwards there was a moment for just the family. And we were there with Mandy and my mom and dad and my sister and her family and Greg, my brother-in-law's parents. And I remember there's this moment where it's like, oh, I was made for this. Because my amazing sister had a great plan for all these 500 people. But here, in this last moment where we're just going to say goodbye to Mandy, nobody knew what to say. So I talked about how she was a ray of light to anybody who met her, and then I just read the passage about God being the Father of lights, and every good gift is from him. And we said goodbye to her. And each person went by and placed something in her casket, and so she was buried with her Salvador Perez jersey and her Travis Kelce jersey and her bag of makeup. And when it was my turn, all I could say was, thank you, and I'm sorry. And the thank you is because she totally made my family so happy. She was amazing to be around. And my sorry was because I just did not know her that well. Margot was born shortly after she was born, and I live 1,000,000 miles away, And the other ones were older. I'm a pen pal with my oldest niece, but Mandy was so little, and I didn't get to talk to her as much as I had wanted to. And one of the things I have thought about since is, as horrific as that was, that isn't even remotely close to the worst thing that has happened to a human being here on the planet Earth. That all kinds of horrific and heartbreaking things happen to people all the time. And if you have been one of them, then you know how isolating it can be when you got to journey through that. So part of what we want to do today is to create space to say, no, this happens to everyone in one way, shape, or form. And Jesus is who he says he was, that he will meet us when we're brave enough to feel these feelings. Now, I remember as we started dreaming about what Dwell Church maybe could one day be, I thought we've got to have something on Palm Sunday that isn't just total fanfare and like blowing trumpets, because I'm sure it was amazing when Jesus came into Jerusalem. But just waving the flags misses out on the God who feels this kind of sorrow in his heart. Not just for me, not just for you, but for all of humanity, for the state of creation. How do we plant a flag and say, this isn't like a Friday night optional church service once a year, but this is like on a big, beautiful Sunday. This is what it means to be the people of God, that we bravely feel these feelings and prayerfully offer them to Jesus. So that's what we're going to do. Now, there's a couple of things I want to arm you with as we go through this, a couple of grief frameworks and tools as you think about your moment. Probably you are familiar with the stages of grief. I think they're really helpful in describing them: denial, anger, depression, bargaining, acceptance. But to describe them as a linear set of stages is a huge misnomer. It's almost always more like this. I made this slide, real proud of it. In no particular order, for no logical reason. Sometimes you're fine for months or years, and then suddenly from nowhere, you're back at the beginning. It comes in waves, and sometimes not at all, and certainly when you're not going to expect it. But it will almost always involve denial and anger and depression and bargaining and acceptance. Bargaining is so abstract and conceptual, right? And I remember with Mandy feeling like, I'm never going to forget this moment. Right? That's a form of bargaining. We made a deal right there. To honor you, I will never do something. Or I will always do something. It's part of our process, right? To swear an oath of some kind. So it's helpful to think about those. And here's a simple thing that you might do. Whatever feelings come up in our 5 minutes of silence, you can just say, Jesus, I offer you this one. I don't know what to do with it. I certainly don't like it. Here it is. And if you don't know what word to put on it, try on one of those. A grief framework that I like much better works like this. This is Tonkin's model of grief. That sometimes we experience the grief as getting smaller, but what is really probably the case is that you are getting larger. In fact, in the Emotionally Healthy Spirituality Book Club, there's a great chapter in that book, Enlarging Your Soul Through Grief. See, when you opt out of the grief process that we described in the first one, you also miss out on the growth. And the problem when you suspend it or opt out is that you get stuck in one of those phases, right? Some people get stuck in the depression phase, or some people get stuck in the anger phase, where you don't work your way all the way through it. But if you faithfully work at the grief, and actually thinkers and scholars working in the psychology of grief now call it grief work, because gosh, is it a lot of work to feel those feelings. If you're faithful at that, what slowly happens is that you become larger and more mature and better able to love and serve the people around you. It's what psychologists call stress-related growth. Over time, when you feel these feelings in fruitful and productive ways, you become deeper and more mature and more useful to the people around you. And that's what we're doing together. Finally, something I call the shelf. Growing up, Midwestern family, we talked about almost nothing. And I certainly tried any way I could think of to never feel my feelings. One of my main goals in life, don't feel those things if you can. And so my stamina for feeling my feelings, I think, is truncated. It is lower than if I had started earlier in life. I don't have a ton of stamina for sitting in it. I know it's important, and I've come to learn that it's an essential part of my humanity, but I can only take it off the shelf for so long. And so an imaginary thought experiment that I like to have is that my internal world is a shelf with all kinds of experiences and memories and stories about Mandy and every other heartbreak that I've experienced. And sometimes on the right day, or sometimes quite randomly because of an intrusive thought, or sometimes because something reminds me so forcefully that I can't help it, I take one of those things off the shelf and I feel all the jagged edges of that story in my life. And if I have my best wits about me, I can pray, Jesus, I offer this thing to you. I offer these feelings. I offer how sharp it feels, how painful it is. And then when I can't do it anymore, I put it back on the shelf. It's still with me, still a part of me, always will be. And for a moment, I did my best to feel all the edges of it. But now I've put it back on the shelf. And the next time I touch it, it feels different. The shape is different. The edges are different. That's because I've been working on it. Some of those have taken me my whole life. Maybe you have regrets that come up randomly during your workday. That's you taking it off the shelf. You're feeling the edges. What we're learning to do together is simply say, God of sorrows, who died with us and for us, I offer these to you. So here are 3 ways of thinking about your grief. I'm going to pray for you, and then we're just going to sit here for a few minutes. And whichever thing you brought with you today, physically or not, feel the edges of it. Try to put a name on the feeling that you feel, and trust that Jesus will meet you there as you offer it to him. Good luck. Jesus, thank you for your kindness. Thank you that you are who you promised to be. Thank you that you are with us. God, that our jagged, painful, heartbreaking human experience is not foreign or alien to you, but instead that you are the man of sorrows who knows us well. And so together we offer you all of that heartbreak. Some years or decade old, some fresh and still quite painful. We offer it all to you, Jesus. And we trust you. Thank you, Lord. Amen. Next Sunday, the Mandy Kay Foundation will host an Easter egg hunt at a church out in Ottawa, Kansas. And my artifact today, this shirt, my Mandy Kay Foundation shirt, and this jacket that I helped perform an impromptu funeral for my niece in. It's amazing because all these years later, the Mandy Kay Foundation has done so much good. There is somewhere in all of this resurrection. But he is a man of sorrows too. And we live in between those two realities. And so for now, what can we do but trust Jesus? That's what we're going to learn to do together. This Jesus who on the last night of his life, before he would go into the garden to sweat in agony and trepidation, before he would die on the cross, he sat with his followers one last time to try to explain what it is he was doing. And he said strange but simple words. This bread is not bread, it is my body. This wine is not wine, it is my blood. So that I will always be with you. Those were the terms of the new covenant. He said, this is my blood shed for you and my body broken for a new covenant. And the deal was he would always be with us. And so to honor his invitation, sometimes we need a chance to say yes to it. So today, 2 stations where you can come and take communion. The bread and the wine, the body and the blood. He says to us, I will always be with you. And it falls to us to accept the invitation. And this, my friends, is the way we accept Jesus' invitation, to always be with us. So as you feel led, come on down as this incredible band plays.